Hello, and welcome back to The Premise. I'm Jennifer Thompson.
And I'm Chad Thompson.
And today we are here with Marijke McCandless, who is the author of Naked in the Now, Juicy Practices for Getting Present. And this book is the kind of book that you want to sink into. You can do it all at once or over the course of many weeks, sinking into getting to know yourself. And it's so beautifully written, and it's like a personal guide for all of these things that maybe sound a little scary, like meditation, for example. So you're going to love this conversation with Marijke. So before we jump in, let me tell you a little bit about her. Marijke McCandless is a writer, mindfulness coach, and playfulness instigator who helps people shed their inhibitions and skinny dip in the present moment. She leads a popular online writing practice called Right Now Mind. Her first book, a memoir called More, Journey to Mystical Union Through the Sacred and the Profane, written under a pen name, won multiple awards. Her essays have appeared in nationally recognized periodicals. She is known for her playful attitude, tenacious spirit, and adventurous soul, and you can often find her rock climbing. Marijke, welcome to The Premise.
Well, hi, Jennifer. Hi, Chad. Really nice to be here.
I'm so glad that you've joined us. This book has won many awards. It's gotten some incredible accolades and endorsements, and people are really loving this book. And I got to tell you, listener, I remember when Marijke started talking about writing this book. And so I'm really excited to dive into this conversation and talk about, what it has become, which is fantastic. So congratulations on that note.
Thank you.
Yeah. So talk to us about what it means to be naked in the now.
What does that mean?
What does this mean? Yeah. Do I have to get naked to read this book?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I was supposed to wear clothes for this interview?
Thank you.
It's so funny. When I was first getting used to speaking the name out loud, I can remember accidentally saying that it was called Naked in the Now, Juicy Practices for Getting Pregnant.
Subconscious was playing hard there.
Sorry. But anyway, no, you don't have to get literally naked for this book. What this is an invitation to experience who you are beneath your thoughts, beneath your pressures, beneath your tensions, even your desires. It's an invitation to be willing and curious to experience the felt sense of beingness itself, which is often covered up by, kind of like what we think about life instead of just resting in the experience of life.
And I think you just used a word that really resonated with me, and that is the pressures of life. We're under these assumptions, that we have to be a certain way, we have to perform at a certain level, or we're not doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And it's, that was my worry in writing this book, that it would be something that people would add to their should do list. Oh God, yeah, I've got to learn how to meditate. I'm gonna do that, right? Because it'd be so good for me. But I wanted to flip that whole attitude and mindset on its head. And that's why I made these practices all really short and really accessible. So in 10 minutes, you have the opportunity I like to say, you have the opportunity to experience delight right now, no matter what's going on. And what I have found is that, especially when we're under a lot of pressure and we have a lot of things on our to-do list, what we tend to want is an endless period of time before us where none of that is there. We somehow want to become people that don't have thoughts, don't have pressures, don't have tensions, and don't have desires. But, right? But it turns out that there's a different thing you can do. You can just practice turning your attention briefly to these moments that we have all day long, where, you glance out the window and the jacaranda tree has started blooming and you're like, oh, it's just like a little tiny in-breath. And so my hope is to show people that they already have it a lot. It's just that we're trained to overlook it. So this is an invitation to come back and ever so slightly expand those tiny little moments of delight that happen all the time.
One of my favorite stories in the book is it takes us back to your childhood. And, that's one of the reasons I think that this book is so approachable is, you're really sharing your personal experiences with us and how you came to know being naked in the now. And this particular story, you're a child, you live in Bellevue, and you've discovered that there are 4-leaf clovers. And 4-leaf clovers bring you luck. And it's such a beautiful little anecdote about innocence and that idea of being naked in the now. Can you tell our listeners about that just that moment in your life and why it matters?
Yeah, it's so we lived in a sort of a lower middle class suburban rambler in Bellevue, Washington, and I remember that our front yard was grass. I was young, 4 years old, maybe 5 years old. And somebody had told me that 4-leaf clovers were lucky. This also came along, by the way, with, rabbit's feet and other sort of weird things
right. That we all had. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the 70s, right? Early
exactly.
70s. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was probably even in the 60s. But anyway, so I would go to our front yard and it's in Washington. So if it was a sunny day, it was already a celebration.
A miracle.
Yeah. But I would be fascinated and I would have this vat of patience and I would sit on the ground and my little tiny hands would sort of separate out the clovers, looking at each one. Nope, that's a 3-leaf clover. Nope, that's a 3-leaf clover. And just be willing to sit there for a long time looking for a 4-leaf clover. Now, I knew it would be hard to find because if it wasn't hard to find, then it wouldn't be special. And so, but much, much later, I realized that that's really ultimately what we're doing when, it's like what the Buddhists call neti, not this, not that. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to point you to this stillness that happens when you're not all caught up in what you're thinking about. And here, as a child, I was essentially recreating that. I had this patience and this focus and a willingness, really, and a curiosity for whether I would run into a 4-leaf clover. And, and I did. Mm-hmm. Not many. I think I found just a couple in my childhood. And those were, preserved in books that I still have those 4-leaf clovers somewhere.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Mm-hmm. That's super cool. I recently was looking through an old book and I found a bunch of pressed flowers. And I don't remember putting them there, but I know I did because I used to do that. And I'm like, yeah, if we could get back to that childlike mentality of having patience and you keep using this word curiosity. And I guess we sort of lose that, don't we?
Well, we can. Yeah, because we're trained that what's more important than being curious, which is a child, is proving that you know something, proving that you have figured something out and that you are the expert. that becomes considered more valuable. And it's not that it's not valuable to learn something and become an expert at it, but if it's in place of remaining open, remaining curious, remaining available to a different way of thinking, available to see whether a lot of times our cherished values, somehow they might no longer serve us. But it takes a lot to go and investigate whether your own values are causing you more suffering or, alleviating suffering.
Do you have an example of what that might be?
The example that comes to mind is not my example at all, but it was an older woman who I worked with writing her book, actually. Her name is Nere. And Nere was a child of, she essentially grew up in Basque Country and moved to South America and eventually moved to America. But she grew up under a pretty strict Catholic upbringing. And it's not that there's anything wrong with the Catholic upbringing, except that for her, it was no longer serving her. She had become, she had let herself become the perfect Catholic mom in place of retaining her own vitality.
Right.
And so she needed to go back and investigate, what parts of this are not serving me? And she had to let some of her entrenched ideas about what it meant to be a woman, what it meant to be a mom, what it meant to live in this life go, because they weren't, she had lost her vitality for living.
Wow. Yeah, and I know the story you're speaking of, and it's a pretty powerful story. I'm trying to remember the name of her book.
It's called The Missing Piece.
That's right. Yeah. Nere Lartegegi? I can't remember how to pronounce her name.
I can't remember how to pronounce it. I know. It is like that. It does begin with an L. Yeah.
Lartegegi, I think. But yeah. So that's so true. Like not only do we have the stress of trying to be successful and trying to be worthy to ourselves, which is, one of the most beautiful things in your book is not only are we being taught how to love ourselves better, how to be better humans, we're taught how to love others better too. These simple practices, these mindfulness practices that just remind you in such a simple way that you can love yourself and others too, and be happier in so doing. Being happier, you teach things like listening reflectively, respecting others' space, smiling was a good one. I was like, oh yeah, we feel better when we smile, don't we?
It's true.
Having the hard conversations, it's like this book is like a masterclass in learning how to be a better human and being better to ourselves. I love the idea of being naked because, and I gotta say, and we should talk about this, like you made a conscious decision to really include provocative phrases in this book.
I did.
Talk to us about that decision and why that was important to you and how do you think it affects the reader's experience in getting to know themselves and stripping down, which there it is, of another provocative word or phrase, stripping down and getting rid of all the pressures. Like, why did that resonate with you and become part of the story?
Well, I like to, so being naked is one of those things that it's kind of a double-edged thing, right? So from one perspective, we don't want to be naked.
It's very scary. Yeah.
Very scary. And it's the source of nightmares that you suddenly end up, naked going to college or something, and it's just, you feel exposed and you feel too vulnerable and you want to protect yourself and cover up. But the other side to being naked is really juicy, and it points us to sort of a fun, lighthearted vitality. Something like you might experience, let's say you've just fallen in love and you've started dating or something, and you've gotten close enough that you're going to take it to the next step. You're going to maybe get naked with each other. And it takes this certain kind of trust to do it. And you do need to feel safe. But there's also this underlying playfulness where all of a sudden you kind of get it. It doesn't really matter if I'm absolutely perfect. This person is into me. And that's and that's how we get that's how we need to be with ourselves.
Right.
We need,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you said it's like being vulnerable with yourself. That's what this is.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
And it's scary at first because, because we're kind of used to the masks that we put up. They're comfortable to us. And it's risky to take them down, but there's a whole lot of potential that lives behind those masks. And it's just unclear what that looks like when you're behind the mask. Mm-hmm. You got to risk it. You got to risk getting naked with yourself.
And then once you start to get naked with yourself and you become more confident, you're able to be more vulnerable with others too, but in a way that I think it's better for you, because if we know ourselves and we know what we're capable of and we know what we can handle, that allows us to move through the world, I think, in a more protective way, right?
That's a really good way of putting it, actually. Yeah, I like that.
So we talked about these intimate terms. I just want to throw some out because they're kind of awesome. So we've got pillow talk, which, by the way, I want to talk about. Naked, strip tease, slip into something more comfortable. But the pillow talk one was really important because you compare it to actual pillow talk after, an intimate experience with a lover, and why that matters and how it brings you into yourself.
Yes.
So let's have a little pillow talk, Marijke. Let's go there.
Let's go there. Well, part of we were talking about these terms or whatever, and I used it to be evocative because I wanted people to get in that mode where they were feeling playful and okay. So with the pillow talk, it's another thing, and I'm talking about pillow talk with your inner beloved, and what it looks like is. So a lot of times we think we know what's important to us. We think we know what we want to talk about. But if we let our words flow in an unrestricted way, a lot of times a new topic will come up. So it's a little bit like when you're laying there, it's pillow talk time and everybody feels safe and protected, and they kind of like branch into something like, God, do you remember when you were 10 years old and you da-da-da-da-da-da-da? And it goes into some terribly vulnerable embarrassing story from when you were 10 or whatever. But it's okay because we're all there in this little cocoon. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good transition. Not that we're going to leave this topic, but Right Now Mind. I mean, that's what you put together a program that encourages people to do just that, right?
Right. And that's actually right where I was going with it.
No, good. Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, let's go there. Because So Right Now Mind is Right Now Mind itself is a virtual online writing practice community that I created just around the time of COVID. Yeah. What it is it's basically based on, it's drawn from the principles of writing practice pioneer Natalie Goldberg, who kind of taught us what free writing was. So free writing is when you write without thinking. You just let the words flow. So right now mind is riffing off of that. And so what you do is there's a very, very brief open-ended prompt like I remember or I feel. And then you write, the rules are keep your hand moving, don't think, basically. And you set a timer. You have to set a timer, and then you just write whatever wants to come out. Whatever wants to come out. And if you stray from the topic, that doesn't matter. If all you can think about is, what you want to have for lunch, then that's what you're writing about. So it's this freedom of expression that helps us, what I like to call it, befriend our mind. It helps us, it's a little bit like pillow talk, which might be really lighthearted, it might be really, silly, or it can go really deep. Mm-hmm. And the possibility and the okayness for it to go either way is what makes it precious. But sometimes it can be hard to stay with what wants to come up, but it can be profound.
Yeah. There's a line in your book that I wrote down. Scale the cliffs of consciousness, daring to enter the unknown. That's kind of what we're talking about here, right?
Yes.
This is one of my favorite sayings, when I'm working with authors and we're branding, a lot of what we're doing is overcoming fear. And so I always have this saying that's like, if you can step just over the threshold of your comfort zone, there's magic there. Like there's a very special little space there waiting if you can just step over your comfort zone. Not too far, but just enough to find that unknown that you're saying.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And sometimes the quote unquote unknown, it's actually known to us, but we haven't allowed ourselves to process it or rethink it or re-experience it, or we haven't maybe wanted it to be true as to who we are. A lot of times there's complex pieces of shame attached to whatever it is. And God knows we don't ever want to feel ashamed. We want to feel perfect and in control and, brilliant examples of humanness.
Yeah.
Which when we're thinking that doesn't include being all messed up and crying every day for 7 years and, having had difficult things happen to us and being less than skillful in our communications. No, it only includes the perfectly curated version of ourselves.
Sounds a lot like social media, which I think is a real problem because we do see these perfect worlds and that's just not reality. And it's not fair.
Right.
We're expected to be that, but we're also like judging others in a very unreal environment, that sets bizarre expectations. And it makes me worry about our younger generations.
Well, they'll find a way.
We always do, don't we?
Presence will find a way because
we adapt.
We adapt. Yeah. There will be, I don't know what it will be, but it will be creative and it will, because as humans, even though we spend a lot of time not being that way and doing all these things, in the end, you can't deny that the experience of presence is actually what we want. Mm-hmm. So you eventually will come back around to it. You'll notice it in your lives. A lot of people take to going outside, where for some reason they feel more present.
Yeah. I absolutely do. If I'm starting to just feel weighed down by life, if I just go walk outside, everything shifts. It's like this, looking up at the trees you were talking about, just noticing things around you. And I think it's because we let those other things take a back seat for a couple minutes. And it does something really profound. And the shift that it happens is pretty incredible.
Yes, exactly. And what I tell people, so we've all heard about how powerful a lot of people report keeping a gratitude journal is. So taking this moment out and writing the things that you're grateful for. So what I tell my students is, oh my gosh, yes, that's wonderful. Definitely do a gratitude journal. But try this too. Try keeping a diary of daily delights. Try just noticing, oh my God, I actually love my 2 minutes when I sit on the patio with my cup of coffee. It's like priceless to me. Let it be okay that it's only 2 minutes. Let it be full. Let it have its due. Its due is valued higher than what 2 minutes sounds like.
So true. And you know what? I've tried so many times to do a gratitude journal, and every time I buy a new journal and it's pretty and it has like all the things about it that's going to be successful because I bought the right one, and I last about a week every time.
Yep. I know.
Consequently, we have a lot of empty journals around this place.
We really do. It's totally true. Yeah, but that... and what you're talking about, Marijke, and that's what I love so much about this book, is you're giving people permission. There's not a right way to do it.
No, there's not a right way to do it. And I think it's somebody like Chad who, with his eye for photography, right? He's capturing these little tiny moments of delight every single photo shoot that he does. And, photos are kind of another way that we do it. It's just that we don't give ourselves credit that we've done it. I'm just saying, shift your attention slightly towards giving yourself credit. Oh my God, yeah. I would normally say life is really sucky right now, but if I actually look at it, it's amazing that I had that moment and that I had that moment and that I turned to my husband and smiled and and then you just start collecting this different view of yourself, which is very helpful. And it's in that view, not the judgmental one, that you can go deeper, that you're more willing to spend 10 minutes doing a pillow talk exercise or 10 minutes of self-inquiry, or because you feel like you're actually okay and you're not screwing up life.
but yeah, so many buts.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess what my takeaway is, and so I've tried to meditate. I'm really bad at it, even though I really want to do it. Pardon me. Will you click us, Chad? I've tried to do it, and it's because I put these expectations on myself. And so what your book has done is it gives very short, pretty easy exercises that remind us to not be so hard on ourselves, to not have these expectations that you're doing it wrong or I'm not doing it right. And there was a moment actually I think it was in the awareness chapter, I think it's chapter 5, where you were causing yourself, I think you were at a retreat for the weekend, and you actually got a migraine because you were trying so hard to do it right, and then something shifted.
Right. And that is a beautiful moment. Probably, it's a transformational moment when you're sitting to meditate and you're beating yourself up because all you're really doing is planning your day, right? Or whatever, or reliving some mistake that you made, or
more likely,
you know. And so what the thing is that once you realize that your thoughts are not going to go away, so to speak. Thoughts are natural. They're going to arise. They're going to pass away on their own. We just attach our identity to them. So what all meditation does is train us to notice when our attention is on our thoughts. And if you spend your whole entire meditation period of 5 minutes thinking about what a failure you are, and then you go, oh, that's a thought.
Right.
You have completely 100% succeeded.
this goes back to what you said earlier, neti neti.
Yes.
Not this, not that.
Not this, not that. Yeah.
I like that. So, I mean, what we really need to be doing is just acknowledging what is happening and being okay with that. Is that right?
Exactly. That's a nice way of putting it. I meditate every morning for like 20 minutes. And a lot of mornings, there's so many thoughts happening. It's not like I'm off in this blissful never, never land. But when I notice the thoughts these days, there's this subtle underlying smile. It's kind of like, oh, look at that cute puppy. The puppy's just doing what the puppy does. It's all right. And there's this okayness. And in that okayness is the treasure of meditating, because that gives us the space to play a little bit longer in the gap.
I want to tell a story about you. I don't know if you're going to remember this, but it was the first time I met you, and I was taking a writing class at UCSD, and you came as a guest speaker, and you had us follow our senses or lean into our senses and use our senses for writing.
Yes.
And one of the things you had us do was you blindfolded us and you had us taste something, touch something. And there was one other, and I don't remember it, but it doesn't matter, because the taste one is the story I want to tell.
Okay.
So we're blindfolded and we're tasting this juice, and we're blindfolded because you don't want us to see the color, which was brilliant. And so we taste this juice, and then we're silent for like a minute. And then you say, okay, now write something, anything that comes to mind. So you were asking us to tap into our subconscious based on this experience, this sensory experience. And I wrote this story about being 4 or 5 years old in northern Idaho, up in Gold Cup Mountain. And my mom is in the garden, and I'm sitting in the garden, and I'm pulling carrots out of the earth, and I'm eating these carrots. And I remember my mom's jeans, and I remember the way the sun was reflecting. Like, it brought me into that moment so viscerally. It was actually like, whoa, right? It was like this snapshot of a memory that I hadn't remembered in a really long time. And I wrote this whole story about eating these carrots right out of the earth. And then we get to the end of the exercise. And so you go around the room and you say, okay, everyone, what was the juice? What were you tasting? And I said, beets. And everyone had a different answer, right?
Yeah.
And then it turns out it was carrot juice. And I was like, oh my God, like, how did I not put that together? That I just wrote a story about eating carrots, but somehow in my brain, I'm like, oh, it's beets. And that really, it really stuck with me, of like our subconscious. So I would like you to talk to us about how we can tap into our subconscious, not just for writing. And I know you're a writing coach, and that's a big piece of this because most of our listeners are in fact writers, but how we can tap into that for just living a more present, mindful life.
I love that story, by the way. I can remember another person who wrote, "This is what green tastes like." what a brilliant thing to say,
right?
About carrot juice, right? Anyway, so it truly, I think one of the most powerful ways to tap into that kind of subconscious is through this is what I call naked writing. And so what we were doing that day at UCSD was a form of naked writing. We were using what I called sensory awakening for writers, but we were writing without thinking and without worrying about our grammar or our punctuation or our spelling. We were just letting the hands move. And often, what happens is these incredibly brilliant, very visceral stories come forth. And that's the beauty of this naked writing. I'm actually working on this really as a topic for talking to people about how to tap into their subconscious, how to become more comfortable with being naked in the now and how to connect with other people. Because when somebody like you in that class reads aloud their words that are totally uncurated, absolutely in the moment, they're so authentic and so honest, even if they maybe aren't perfectly, put together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're unedited, right? But once we begin to listen to other people doing that, we begin to see other people in ourselves, and we begin to get it. Oh, it's not in the perfection with which they told this story that makes me want to listen. It's in the authenticity of the story. And so for me, naked writing is truly a doorway in. There's other tricks you can use. There's, you can practice just talking to yourself on a recorder and asking yourself what it wants to talk about. If you're not a writer, there's a teacher, Sherry Huber. She calls it recording and listening. And so basically, and it works really well if you're in the middle of some yucky thing, right? So you give yourself a chance to speak that completely out, like, oh my God, I'm never going to live through this. My back is killing me. I can't do the 25 things that are on my to-do list. I'm failing at everything I'm doing. You just speak it all in there. And then you listen to that person. And the beauty of it is you then record a response to that person where it's like your higher self is kind of an overused phrase, but it's sort of like Sherry calls it your mentor, where that part of you just speaks compassionately to that person who's experiencing that. And so, it might be something like, oh man, I hear you. You've just been through so much. Wow. And you're just with the person as they're going through something. And then you erase the first recording and you only listen to the second one.
Oh, okay. Interesting. This is really brilliant.
Isn't that an interesting? So that's one of my, that would be, it's not an exercise that I created, but it's one that I think is brilliant. And I honor Sherry Huber for bringing it to the world.
Do you ever watch Twin Peaks?
Oh my God, I used to. Yes.
So there's a theory going around that basically that's what Agent Cooper is doing when he's talking to the recorder. And that there isn't actually a Diane. Diane doesn't exist, or Diane is dead.
Right.
Depending upon which conspiracy theory you go down.
Yes. We are all Agent Cooper and Mystery Woman Diane within our own selves.
There you go. I really like that theory. That's one of my favorite shows. We're getting to the end, and I really want to talk about more. And our listeners are like, what more do you want to talk about? I want to talk about your first book, which was mentioned at the opening, More, Journey to Mystical Union Through the Sacred and the Profane. And I think the reason I really want you to talk about it is you said something earlier that 7 years of crying, that sort of slipped past us. But you actually went through a pretty hard time, which is why I think you've come to who you are as a human today, and partly why this book is here, to help others through hard times. So can you tell us a little bit about that book and how it has helped you create the person you are now?
The backstory.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the juicy backstory? So More was the memoir that I wrote about a period in time, which was the catalyst for which was, a personal crisis, a personal and marital crisis. So, the quippy way of saying it is I walked in on my husband and my best friend together. Mm-hmm. So it was a devastating pull the rug out from under you moment, of course. And all of the okay, so the saving grace was that there was a couple of saving graces. Basically, anybody can imagine if that happens, it's a crisis. It's an obvious crisis in the relationship. Something is askew. You're not addressing something. What are you going to separate? So we realized that we were at a crisis in our relationship, and that we could separate, or we could decide to stay together. And the two ways of staying together were push this under the rug and pretend like it never happened, or dive deeper into what was awry, what was happening beneath the overt act. So ultimately we decided to dive deeper, and we went to traditional couples therapy and individual therapy, but we also took a non-traditional path, which was we did what was called a year-long love and ecstasy training. And
this is where you learn to love yourself too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's where I learned the principles of meditation and the principles of self-inquiry and the power of vulnerability and transparency, even in a relationship. And it's and a bunch of other stuff too. But in that, so this was, it was a year-long training that happened over 3 10-day retreats. And then in between the 10-day retreats, there were little monthly weekend gatherings. So it was a huge commitment in the middle of your regular life, but it wasn't 365 days. It was, but what happened during this very deep therapy work, and this love and ecstasy training was that memories of childhood sexual abuse began to arise for me. And I just had to come face to face with something that I had swept under the rug so deeply that I wasn't even aware of how it might have been contributing to my behavior, to my clinginess, to my neediness, to smothering my husband, so to speak. And one of the things that happened during this incredibly difficult period of flashbacks and reckoning within myself, because at first I didn't believe it at all. And I had to do a lot of work to go back in time and verify. And, in my head, I had just had this perfect childhood and everything was great. And then to suddenly have these visceral flashbacks was devastating. But also what happened was, and one of the things that helped my husband and I rekindle our trust was that he showed up for me as I was going through this yuck. And he was so present. He wasn't actually afraid. He was 100% there with me. And that taught me so much. It just taught me how somebody's presence can change your experience of the moment. It can change how you view yourself. I just thought I was broken and there was going to be no fixing this. He just saw me as having some tough stuff that had happened, and he was going to be there for me as I worked through it. And that was profoundly impactful.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's an extraordinary book. It's quite a journey to take that, that time with you. And to me, it makes total sense, knowing the history and reading that book and then seeing this book of how you've turned these practices and these realizations into something that people can use every day to check in with their own trauma and check in with their own history that creates these pressures that we don't even know we're putting on ourselves, these expectations that we didn't really put on ourselves, but we did. And that's part of it, right?
Right. And that first book is also part and parcel because it was such a journey that did involve sex, just not in the way you think, in a way. But that's part of why Naked in the Now uses those terms, because for me, it's just a metaphor for getting to the juicy goodness of life.
And what a beautiful thing if you can give yourself that space.
Yeah.
Which, brings us back to playfulness. And, your writing courses and everything you do has such a playful way about it. And I guess what I'd like to end with is, do you have a favorite playfulness practice that you can share with people to just give them a little taste of what this is all about?
Oh my goodness. I don't know that I actually have a particular practice that I could point to right now, but there is this, if your listeners can just imagine, putting a twinkle in their eye when they listen to something that they don't agree with or that they think is the wrong way to go. I mean, we have lots of opportunity for that right now.
Yes, we do.
We're all at odds with each other. And I'm not suggesting to do this on a big scale. I'm talking about a little thing like, I don't know, your husband doesn't take out the trash. So it could be this, I know. Not your husband, of course.
Of course not.
But I'm just saying something silly that where you can if you just put a twinkle in your eye and imagine just for shits and giggles, imagine how you could, instead of being all upset and disappointed and again, this thing wasn't done and now you're going to have to do it or whatever, just imagine that it's a private inner joke between the two of you. And that it's a secret message that when he doesn't take out the trash, what it really is a secret message for you within yourself to choose playfulness and lightheartedness. It's like the universe saying, choose. And so then when something triggers you, instead of it being a trigger that then starts downward spiral, it triggers you to go within yourself and create a little gap between your response and your reaction, between the stimulus and the response. Actually, the newsletter I just wrote is sort of a version of that, where when something terrible happens, instead of saying, oh my God, something terrible just happened, or oh my God, he didn't take out the trash again, you replace it with, isn't that surprising? Wow, I'm going to use this as my cue to smile.
So it's not really about like play and the way we think of children playing. It's more about being playful and how you respond. Or at least that seems like maybe that's part of it.
Yes, I would say that's a good way of putting it. It's an attitude of playfulness, because when we have that attitude of playfulness, we don't have an agenda. Play doesn't have an agenda. So things don't have to turn out a certain way in order for it to be a good result.
Right. Lessons to take with us. What are you working on now? What's the big thing happening in your life right now, Marijke?
Well, actually, I'm just getting ready to teach for the first time at the Las Vegas Writers Conference.
Nice.
And that's happening April The Las Vegas, the April 23rd to the 25th. And actually, Jennifer, I'm going to be doing a Sensory Awakening for Writers workshop. I haven't done it in a really long time.
Nice. Oh, I wish I could go. That would be so cool. I think I'm going to be in Portland at that time, but that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the next big thing on my list. I'm also traveling to Washington, and I'm going to be teaching back again there at Village Books, which was a wonderful thing. I've got Right Now Mind going. I have in-person events once a month in Las Vegas at the Blue Diamond Library. I do an in-person, not an in-person, but a virtual event every week. I do Right Now Mind, which is a virtual online free event. And then I do these periodic workshops and retreats throughout the year. So that's kind of the main thing that I'm going on, because I also still love to get out rock climbing. I also still love to play with my grandkids.
There's a lot of good things happening.
A lot of good things.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining Chad and I today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here with you guys.
Well, folks, please visit Marijke on her website, marijkemccandless.com. Also, check out her Substack. You can find that same way. It's called The Naked Now Letter, which, by the way, I love that. And you can find that either through a link on her website or just do a Google for Naked in the Now. Also, follow Marijke McCandless on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Marijke McCandless. This has been another episode of The Premise. You can visit us online at thepremisepod.com, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review The Premise wherever you get your podcasts. Those reviews really help us get the word out, and we just appreciate you being here with us today. You can follow me, your host, on Instagram and Facebook at Jennifer Thompson Consulting. Until next week, thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.